And welcome all. This is Dave White sitting in for the one and only Tom O'Brien. We'll be going through lots of earnings tonight, and Tom will be back tomorrow. What do we have? Of course, if you're new and listened to me never, I come on between the 2 and 3 hour, 2 and 3 p.m. You can always catch my show, the Power Trading Hour, then. Of course, a lot of action today. Depending on whether you were around at the open, at noon, or a little after 2, you would have seen several different markets. Almost what was a Sybil had all the different personalities. Although I think that actually proved to be a fraud. I can't remember now. Anyway, we had a Sybil of a market out here today. Many different personalities. Open lower, they pushed the market higher most of the day, got to 20.99 on the S&P cash, rolled over about 2 o'clock. They decided to blame it on Carl Icahn and the sell of Apple shares, but I'm not exactly sure that had it. The market looked extremely weak to me when I was on the air between 2 and 3, and it looked like it was ready to roll already. As we get to the markets, we'll do a little wrap up here. We were off 20 on the S&P cash after being up to 20.99 and tapping on the door of 2100. The NASDAQ was off 58 after a huge move by, of course, Facebook. Dow was off at 207. I can't remember how much it was, what the high was today. And let me take a quick look. Yeah, I don't know if that was, where is that? There it is. We got to 18,035. So what do we call it? We're going to call it a 200 some plus point range throughout the day. And gold was up strong. That had a lot to do with the Bank of Japan pulling the football away from a lot of Forex traders who thought they were going to devalue. In retrospect, everybody said, well, they can't do it in front of that G7 or G20 conference coming up here in a week. They'll wait until that happens, and then they will spike the punch bowl. Crude at 45.71. Nat gas was down 4%. So what do we end up with a volume? Well, normally you're listening to Tom O'Brien today, and you think, what's volume? Well, I use the New York Consolidated Tape, which is the New York Stock Exchange, all the shares traded on any ECN, Electronic Commerce Network, and including the Amex Exchange 2. That came out to 4.2 billion shares. To break through the highs, we probably should have been in the 4.8 to 5.2 range, so we were about 25% light yet again today. And that's just trying to match previous volumes at that and at those highs. But it's been kind of an interesting day. If you listen to my show, you know how much I like history. The stock market is basically whatever's happened before will happen again, and we look at those patterns to redo it. It's the same way in history.
Then it's all just a little bit of history repeating.
It is, and on this day in 1942, World War II bear market hits its bottom as the Dow Jones Industrial Average closes at 92.92, down almost 1 point for the day and 16.3% for the year to date. Over the next 4 years, the market more than doubles. And, you think we had tough times. I can imagine looking at the stock market at 1942 on this day and seeing that there's only up from here. Of course, a great deal happening. We'll get into earnings as they come out. Amazon beat. It was up 12%, something like that. LinkedIn is beat up about 15%. Expedia up about 10%. A lot of those companies had some pretty heavy shorts, and if they didn't drop the chalupa on earnings, we're going to pop up a little bit. My guess is we probably will have a little higher opening tomorrow, but the vast amount of stocks, we'll get into them during the show tonight, having a weakness. The most well-known stocks pretty much having some bounces like Facebook. Of course, Apple really taking it out later in the day. We'll say why I informed you thusly on it. But Carl Icahn was selling his shares, and that put a little bit more pressure on Apple. The reason why he's selling his shares, though, is something I've brought up for years, and we will continue in on that. In the morning, Monster Beverage, though, Phillips 66, Royal Caribbean Cruise, Seagate Technologies, of course, Western Digital after the bell tonight. We'll look at that. Tyco International also. And after the bell tonight, of course, we did have Amazon. Amgen, I think, is out already. Baidu, Expedia up for electronics. Gilead, Groupon, Hartford, Juniper Networks is going to be out. LinkedIn is out and up. Outer Wall, Pandora, Select Comfort, Skyworks Solutions, Trimble Navigation, VeriSign, Western Digital, and Wynn Resorts. So we've got a great deal of stuff to cram in to a very short 1 hour. But I will get to the Carl Icahn story, which I think kind of was able to put a little pressure on this market going into the close. And I have to give you one of these.
I informed you thusly.
I did. And what Carl had to say today was it's the attitude of the Chinese government. And I've been talking about this for 2 years. The Chinese have no concept of giving anybody else any money. There's been a lot of discussion politically over the last year about what is fair trade. I can guarantee you I've been there. They have one thought, and that is to win. They don't have any idea of fair play or how to get along with anybody. They're out to win. They are like the probably the best race car drivers. Horrible, horrible people. Nobody, maybe you want to meet them once, but if you're a friend to them, you'll always get the short end of the stick. And that's pretty much the way it is. They are the ultimate capitalists. After coming out of a communist regime, they have absolutely zero desire. But there was also a lot of overselling for Apple. Apple had this idea that everybody was going to own an iPhone. We went through it yesterday after their earnings, and we've got countries like India where an iPhone would be 25% of their entire earnings for the year on average. Even in China, it would be 1/10 of their earnings for the entire year. Apple decided to try to get around this in both India and China and got pushed out. They did this by trying to sell the used iPhones that got traded in here in the United States over there at a discounted price. The Chinese government, the Indian government didn't like it either. There is no free trade when you get over there. Icahn is just coming to that, which I have talked about for years. We'll be back in a minute.